All right, welcome to this explainer. Today we're unpacking a literal survival guide from the Ledger app team, and we're looking at exactly why early stage startups really run out of money. Let's just dive right in. Because if you're building a company, raising capital, or frankly just trying to stretch out your current runway, the insights we're covering today are absolutely vital. We've got to start by shattering a massive assumption right out of the gate. Startup death, it usually comes from a lack of visibility, not just wild excessive spending. We tend to picture a startup failing because of these lavish expenses, extravagant parties, or massive unnecessary ad campaigns. But the reality is way quieter and honestly way more dangerous. It's a silent drain. It's simply not knowing where the cash actually went. So, to fix this, here is our game plan. We are going to systematically break this down into 5 areas: the real startup killer, why finance is a team habit, logging versus tracking, the subscription trap, and finally, building systems before crises.
Okay, section 1, the real startup killer, and why eventually is a complete trap.
You know how it is. When you're in pure survival mode, you're desperately trying to find product market fit. Expense tracking just feels like admin work, right? It's something you'll handle eventually. But here's the thing. Eventually never arrives on a calm, quiet afternoon. It arrives as a brutal surprise. A bank statement that just doesn't add up, a massive vendor invoice that got lost in the shuffle, or that sudden terrifying realization that your runway is suddenly 2 months shorter than you projected. Moving to section 2, finance as a team habit. We need to break the silo. Most early-stage teams make this fatal mistake of treating cost tracking as a job for just the founder or maybe a part-time accountant. And that creates a totally siloed setup. Team members submit expenses randomly, ad hoc, and leadership just approves them without any wider context. But compare that to making finance an actual team habit, when everyone has visibility, when your whole team sees what's logged, what's pending, and what the real-time balance is. Spending decisions naturally improve across the entire company. People actually think twice before swiping the card when they can see the whole picture. This quote really hits the nail on the head. The absolute biggest lie startups tell themselves is that they'll figure out the financials later. But by the time you realize your system is broken, the damage is completely done. Visibility is not some luxury you earn after you become profitable. It's the exact survival mechanism that keeps you alive long enough to get there.
All right, section 3, logging versus tracking, or data entry versus actual understanding.
This is a super subtle distinction, but it traps almost every early-stage team. Look, logging is just data entry. You're just writing down what was spent. But tracking means actually understanding what those numbers mean. It means knowing if you're over budget, watching how specific categories are growing month over month, and actively comparing your real-world spending to your original projections. And you can instantly spot a company that only logs expenses by asking them one simple, everyday question. Imagine sitting in your all-hands meeting right now and asking, hey, how much did we spend on software tools this month? If your team's honest answer is that somebody has to go dig through a mountain of emails and credit card statements just to pull a basic number, yeah, you've got a logging problem dressed up as a tracking problem. The data exists somewhere, sure, but it's totally useless to you in the moment. And the only fix for this is real-time categorization. Which brings us to section 4, the subscription trap, also known as the quiet leak. $49 a month. I mean, nobody ever questions a single isolated tool for $49, right? Or how about that forgotten free trial for some premium PDF converter you used literally once 6 weeks ago and it auto-converted? Individually, these just feel like rounding errors. But man, look at how this compounds. A single tool gets ignored. A single platform gets ignored. But when you finally group all of these unmonitored recurring costs together, it is almost always a massive, shocking surprise. Suddenly, you're looking at hundreds, maybe thousands of dollars wasted every single month on stuff you probably stopped using 2 quarters ago. Solid cost tracking drags these recurring expenses right out into the open so they can actually be audited. And finally, section 5, build systems before crises. This is the core of the Ledger app philosophy. The ultimate fatal flaw is waiting until a crisis actually hits, like a mysteriously massive expense month, to scramble and put a process together. The teams that stay financially healthy, they avoid this entirely. They don't necessarily have the biggest budgets. They just implement 3 simple habits from day 1. Log it immediately, categorize it correctly, and give the right people visibility. This is exactly the gap the source material is addressing. Tools like Ledger app are built specifically for this tricky early stage. They give small teams actual, usable visibility. We're talking real-time balance tracking,
custom categories so you know exactly where the money is going, and visual reports. And it does it all without the heavy, crushing complexity of some massive enterprise finance software. So, the big takeaway from this survival guide is actually pretty straightforward. Expense tracking does not have to be complex, but it has to be honest and it has to be visible. If you build these straightforward systems early on and just stick to them consistently, the system literally pays for itself. The clarity and peace of mind it brings to your whole team is invaluable. I want to leave you guys with this final, really powerful thought. Surviving isn't about perfectly avoiding every single cost. It's about eliminating the unknown. So look at your own operations right now and ask yourself, is your team currently running on assumptions, or are you actually tracking to survive?